I know there's a lot of great players here that I'm excited and looking forward to playing with. And also, I know I've heard a lot of great things about the coaching staff. They've coached a lot of players that I know, and it's all been great things. So I think that was also a big part of it.
Welcome back to Red Stars Report. It's been a while. I'm your host, LT.
I'm your co-host, Liz.
We are typically out of practice. We're typically a podcast that's dedicated to bringing you the latest news and commentary on all things Chicago Red Stars. However, we've been away for some time, didn't get to cover the end of the Summer Cup or anything that went on during the Olympics, but, don't worry. You can trust us again. We're back. We're back on all your favorite podcast platforms, YouTube, to let you know what's going on with this club. The biggest thing that we missed covering was the Olympics. And oh boy, was that poor timing for us as the U.S. women's national team won gold. And it did in the gold medal match with a, game-saving saves by Chicago Red Star Alyssa Nair. Game-winning goal by Chicago Red Star Mal Swanson. Absolutely wild and super fortunate for us in the Red Stars community.
I would also throw in there an absolutely phenomenal first half performance by now Red Star Ludmila. She was fantastic in that first half. I have no idea why they subbed her, but thank you. I bet Alyssa was during that game. She's like, thank God she's going to be our teammate.
Right. Yeah. Only player on Brazil that was really giving the U.S. problems. So that was very beneficial for our fan base too. Like if you're a U.S. fan in this community, it was like bittersweet. Like, it's nice to see her excelling, but please don't beat the U.S. It would have been interesting to see her get a goal, and if the U.S. could have continued to gain the lead again and still win gold, that probably would have even been more beneficial for us. But overall, like throughout the entire tournament, Mal very much looked like the Mal that they wanted in the World Cup. Alyssa was headlining articles the following day of every match with her saves. It was just very good to be a Red Stars fan during the Olympics, and I was very happy to see that, and I'm sad that we didn't get to cover any of it in real time.
Yeah, it was fun. I always assume that the United States is going to compete for gold medals. There were a lot of naysayers out there, so I'm glad that the team as a whole could prove kind of the haters wrong a little bit here. I would have loved to see them get a shot at Spain. Obviously, that didn't happen because everybody was talking about that, how Spain was the favorite of the tournament. They did not have a great showing defensively, I would say. Brazil really took it to them. Very impressive. Ludmila was impressive in the tournament. Brazil as a whole was just an impressive team, but triple espresso, man. They showed out, they showed up, and Mal she was fantastic. Lots of praise for her. Obviously, Alyssa got a ton of praise, and you had some former Red Stars like Tierna Davidson had a fantastic tournament as well. She obviously got hurt a little bit during the tournament, but she was really, really good. And it was just overall good to see the U.S. come out on top. You could see the relief once the final whistle blew, like the relief hit all the players. Mal was very emotional. That there's a picture of her with Alyssa, and Alyssa even talks about it in one of the articles that came out about how it meant so much to Mal. It meant so much to everybody, but for Mal to miss the World Cup and then to come out and have the tournament that she did, it was so good.
And it meant so much to Alyssa to see Mal get that success. Like, the way she spoke about the tournament was always just about like her vision of Mal and her experience. She never really spoke about her own, which is very classic Alyssa. But yeah, the photo of Mal like falling into Alyssa's arms, sobbing, and then there's a video out there of Alyssa just like sitting on the ground with Mal just in her lap, bawling her eyes out. I mean, the stuff that was coming out afterwards, like the post about Mal's yearbook quote from like middle school, wanting to win a gold medal with this team, and now she has it. She was one goal away from the Golden Boot, if that was, you know, an award that they were going to give out, but
which they should.
They should. Alyssa only had 2 goals scored against her in the tournament. Just an absolutely unreal job by both of them. And then to just bring it back domestically, you know, we'd want nothing more than our Red Stars to succeed internationally, and then capitalize on that for the club at home.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. My favorite thing that kind of came out of Alyssa Nair during the Olympics was she, in one of the articles, I cannot recall which one, she kind of talks about how she realizes the end is closer than the beginning of her career for the national team. And so she talks about how she's become that veteran figure where she's enjoying things more. She's doing the little TikTok videos. She's being kind of that, I don't want to say motherly, but kind of motherly figure to some of these younger players like a Trinity Rodman,
Certainly
her
to Trinity.
and Alyssa. Yeah, they've really hit it off. And I like Sophia Smith even had a quote, and Naomi Gurma, where they're talking about how they wouldn't have won this tournament if it wasn't for Alyssa. And I believe that Alyssa and Gurma, and I cannot recall who else, it might be Berger from Germany, played every minute of the tournament. And they were some of the only players that did that, which is impressive. Obviously, she's a keeper, so that's different. Gurma's also just fantastic. I'll also have to just give her a shout out there.
Except against Ludmila.
Right.
Ludmila kind of gave her some issues.
I mean, if you want to bring this back to the Red Stars and about that, I cannot wait to see her fit in with our team. It's going to be fantastic. She looked really good. Now, was that a minutes restriction why she came out? I'm curious, because she is coming back from an injury. I know it's been a year out, but still just a lot of questions, but I was impressed with what I saw. She is fast. She's strong on the ball. She's crafty. Just so many good aspects I saw just in that half of the game against the United States, against one of the best defenders in the world.
Yeah. I was so impressed. I never really had like, after we sign anybody, I tend to go into like a deep dive of footage on them and stats and stuff, and I didn't really do much of that when they signed her. I saw like some brief things, but just watching her throughout this entire tournament, I was very, very excited for her to join Chicago. And it's not like I know Chicago's in this like young player phase of their of this era, and Ludmila's not a young player, but I hope this team does need that like extra veteran presence, especially up top. And if her and Mal can have a good connection between each other, and then whoever else fills in on that front line, it's going to be a problem. And the problem became this match after the Olympics, because the club was without Ludmila because she hasn't gotten her visa approved yet. She's not with the club. And then Mal was out with an illness against Racing Louisville. And the Red Stars took on Racing Louisville in Louisville, lost 3-1. Was brutal to watch. Louisville had just added Bethany Balser and Janine Becky to their roster, which was kind of like a shocking moment in the NWSL. But the Red Stars had added Julia Grosso. But as I said, we're without Mal, and that kind of made for some interesting stuff going on, both in formation and tactic wise on the pitch. I liked the players in the starting lineup. but I didn't really like what they chose to do sort of formationally. And then the tactics just seemed to be all off throughout the entire match. Why Julia Grosso, one of the best connectors in the world, is playing so high up the field as if to replace Mal was, I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah, I was excited when I saw Grosso was in the lineup, and then when I saw where she was on the field and she was like standing right next to Penelope Hawking, I was like, what is happening? What are we doing? And she had a great game passing wise, like she was very successful, but we need that further back so that it helps move the ball up the field. And there was one play in particular in the second half where she did progress the ball down the field herself, and she
That was so
is
nice.
so smooth. It's so nice to see. And I just am imagining Mal on the field with her and Ludmila eventually, hopefully, visa situation gets worked out. And I mean, also, this is the first regular season game that the Red Stars have played this season without Sam Staub. So
True.
that was also a little bit of an adjustment. Now we moved Kuika back to center back alongside Anderson, and then we moved Nesbeth back to outside back. So that there were just some interesting choices made. To me, Nesbeth is just not an outside back. I just don't think that that capability is there. I think that's more of a defensive midfielder situation. Personally, I would have rather seen Carey move back to center back because I think that Anderson needs that veteran back there side by side. I'm fine with it if it's Kuika, but it can't be Nesbeth on the outside there. It's got to be somebody else. But I feel like we lose so much with what Kuika brings on the outside when we move her inside. So the question is it worth that vet on the inside having Kuika play center back or and lose what you lose on the outside? Like that's the conundrum to me. And I think it's more beneficial to have her on the outside.
Yeah, so they were playing in this, I don't know, like 4-2-2-2 sort
Sometimes
of
it wasn't even a
situation.
4-back. It was like a weird 2-back, 3-back thing.
Yeah,
I don't even know.
it depended on I mean, usually when they're in defense, they're kind of playing in like a 5-back because Carey sort of moves into the back line. But when they're playing forward, because they play so transitionally, their formation is so hard to read unless they're just positioned when there's like a throw in on the other side of the field or a free kick or something. And when you have Jamise and Jenna sort of playing these like wing midfields kind of wing back sort of situations, and then you have Penelope um and Julia Grosso sort of playing 2 up front with Julia dropping back sometimes, which is very much kind of like what Ali Schlegel does. But Ali Schlegel is built for that. Like, I don't need Julia Grosso being the one pressing at the top when you struggle to connect in the middle. I don't need that. But like you said, when you're playing in that 4-back, like people keep talking about this, like lack of defensive depth is hurting the Red Stars, and that's fine. You can say that, but it's not like they don't have the pieces to fill a good back line still. Except when Tatum went out, which was a little bit of a problem. You have Tatum, who suddenly is back over on the left side because of this Leilani Nesbeth experiment, even though she's been killing it on the right side for the last 4 or 5 matches. And you put Hannah to the left because Sam Staub is out. You bring Kuika back center. You play Leilani Nesbeth on the right side. I think you put Tatum on the left or Tatum on the right, move Kuika back over to the left, play Carey Recaro and Hannah in the middle. Like Carey Recaro has played center back on championship winning teams before. There's no reason that you can't put 4 actual defenders who are experienced outside of Hannah Anderson on your back line. I don't understand it. especially when you're struggling in the midfield. You have Julia Grosso, who in this formation, if anything, should be playing in that double pivot with B. Franklin. If you actually want to have a connector in the middle alongside B. Franklin, who was the only one in that middle who was sort of moving things forward. It seemed like a little bit of a mess. Like the personnel is fine, but where you're playing them and how you're utilizing them, I think was just all over the place. And then you have Cameron Bogalski, who comes in at right back and actually plays really well as a right back. And it's like, oh, so you do have depth there, but you're not utilizing it until it's too late. And it was just frustrating to watch. And I didn't enjoy watching that defense play when you have players that can not look just as good as a back line with Sam Staub does, but can at least not give up 3 goals to Louisville.
Well, and to me, if Carrie's dropping back essentially to a 5-back anyway when we're playing defense, then why not just play her at center back? I mean, essentially that's what she's doing. And then if you're having struggles with the midfield, well, maybe it's because Carrie's dropping back into a 5-back. So if she's already back there, you can actually have 2 people at like run a double pivot with Grosso and B, then have a midfield, and then the ball can move forward. But instead of playing a double pivot, we essentially ran a double 9, which is not helpful when the middle of your field is the huge issue. I am just as you, I'm very, very confused. Bogalski impressed me in the very limited time that she got on the field. It kind of felt like he threw some people out there at the very end of the game to be like, well, see, I put him out there and we still lost, is what it kind of felt like to me. That's just my perspective, because it's like, well, I did play Bogalski, I did play Julia Bianchi, I did play those players and they didn't do anything. Well, they need more time. And
not
also
coming in at the 80th minute during a 3-1 match. Yeah.
Yes. And when you have a player that is repeatedly getting smoked on the backside, like they're missing those backside runs, and they're supposed to be playing outside back and they're drifting centrally, because guess what? They play in the middle of the field normally. Like sometimes I've noticed that Nesbitt likes to hang out in the middle when she plays midfield. She likes to play in the middle a little bit.
Yeah.
She does get outside, but she's used to that. So when she's playing outside back, her tendency, there were times where she was standing right next to the center back. She was standing right at the top of the 18 instead of being outside. And that's why we were getting killed on the outside, because we weren't marking that player. They were just getting free runners into the box on the backside. And that's really hard. And Alyssa's not going to be able to stop those.
No. And it reminded me of earlier in the season, because Kuika was sort of this silent killer in the back and was cleaning up everybody's issues either in the middle or on the wing. And when it was Maxi over there at right back in the beginning of the season, when she was getting beat consistently because of her lack of speed, Kuika was always there on that right side to try to save the day, which leaves the middle open. But the middle can be left open early in the season because Sam Staub could literally cover the middle of an entire defense alone. You don't have that anymore. Hannah Anderson is a rookie. Hannah Anderson, still has her growth to go through. I think she's a lot better than people expected her to be this early in her career. But she's not Sam Staub. You can move her to the left side, and you can not give up goals there, but she's still not Sam Staub. Whatever Sam usually does to help people on the left and the right, Hannah's still learning how to do that. She's still learning how to progress the ball the way Sam does. And now she doesn't have Sam next to her to teach her those things. She has Natalia Kuika, who plays center back internationally, but doesn't play it a whole lot, or hasn't played a whole lot domestically in her career. You move her back over, but she's essentially still playing right back once again, because so much space is left open on that right side by Leilani Nesbitt. But she was playing a little bit more centrally when a player like Cameron Bogalski is out there. You need to put players in the position that they're meant to play. You're pushing for playoffs. You can't have experiments with where to put a player on the pitch because you want them to be on the pitch. I know people like Leilani Nesbitt. She's had her moments as a defensive midfielder. She's been even a little better when she played up higher in a match or two, but she's not a right back, and that experiment should be done and over with. You have right backs on this team, use them.
Well, and again, like Nesbitt has had moments, good moments, don't get me wrong, when playing midfield. But we signed midfielders here. Like, we've signed players. So clearly the team is noticing that there's an issue in the midfield. That doesn't mean that you take some of the players that might not be performing in the midfield and decide to throw them at outside back. Like, that's not what we do. Like, in the Summer Cup, it was fine. Great. Try it, whatever. Nobody cares. Like, that, those games didn't really matter. Especially, I felt like after Staub got hurt, the Red Stars are like, I'm done. Like, we're moving on. This doesn't really matter. Like, we're gonna, whatever. And now is not the time. That game was very winnable against Louisville. It very much was, without Mal. We can't also go back to the whole narrative of we can't win without Mal, because that's just not true. And I was reading a lot of that, and I also was reading a lot of hate against Alyssa Narragain, so let's not do that either. Like, none of that was Alyssa's fault. Like, that is just, it was chaos. But yeah, it's just one of those things where Nesbitt can be good, but I also don't think that we're doing her any favors by throwing her into these random positions and expecting her to know what she's doing. Like, outside back is not her spot. And to put her in these positions and be like, okay, here you go. This is what you're going to do, when you have a Cameron Bogalski out there that is very capable, like, has played for a few years on good teams and has played minutes and has been shoved down, like, could hardly play, like, barely played. And clearly she's good. She was actually defending properly. She had good positioning. I just noticed that there were moments in the game where Jamise Joseph was having to get back and defend on the back line, essentially, because Nesbitt was not in the proper position.
Same with Jenna when they switched sides.
Yep, exactly. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, we can't have that. Like, I don't care who it is out there, and I don't mean to just sit here and like harp on Nesbitt, but like, we're not going to win games if your frontline players or your wing players are having to get back like that, especially when we're having issues progressing the ball up the field. I did notice Hannah Anderson on the positive side. She is going to be a player eventually, when she gets a little bit more confidence, that is going to be a Sam Staub type player of breaking lines as a center back. I can see it. I've seen glimpses of it. It looks very promising. And I think that as time goes on and she gets more minutes under her belt, we're going to see that more often, which is really going to be helpful with players like Mal and Grosso, for her to move the ball and break lines like that. So I am liking what I'm seeing from Anderson so much.
I would say even more similarly to kind of what Tierna Davidson brought to this team. A little more that style, less of a Sam Staub.
They're built the same too. Tierna and Hannah are built very similarly too.
Yeah, exactly. And like what Tierna provided in this for this club for years was that ability to see the field in front of them and know who was next to them and behind them to be able to break those lines, not just with long passes, but even just progressing the ball at their feet. And Hannah shows that like once or twice a match. And as a rookie, to even just do that and be noticeable like that, she made, there was that moment when she was progressing the ball up and she made like a little move to get past the midfielder and break that line. I was like, no, it's like, are you a forward? Are you a midfielder? What is, like, who's out there? Is that Hannah Anderson or?
Should we have her playing at the double nine?
No, Alyssa should be playing the double nine. We've already decided that. Yeah. Like I said before, when you have defenders, use them. When you have midfielders, use them. I don't think there's any reason we need to be experimenting with people's positions. You try it once, try it twice, that's fine. This is the second time they've tried Leilani at right back. I don't think it's going to work out. When they started bringing B on earlier this season, in her college career, she was a lot more of a central midfielder playing up higher. They put her on once as a defensive midfielder, and she played well. Put her on again, she played well. Put her on again, she played well. Like, that's when you know an experiment is working. And clearly Lauren knows that because he keeps starting her as a defensive midfielder. But when that position used to be Leilani Nesbitt's, which used to be Julia Bianchi's earlier in the season, and that player is now being replaced by someone who has performed better at that position than them, you can't just find another position for that player on the field that is out of position for them. Use them as a late sub to bolster your energy late in the match. Your subs are there for a reason. They're not just players that are just not good enough to be on the team, and then you just use them whenever. They're players that can be utilized later in the match to make a difference. And Leilani can be that. She doesn't have to be a starter. It's the same thing that we said about Jenna Bike last season. As much as we sit there and beg for this player to be a starter, she was a killer when she was a late sub. And she showed flashes earlier in the season as a starter, but now she seems to be struggling a little. Why not bring her back to this dominant late sub? Utilize players the way that they have shown in their careers that they can be utilized well, and not just be thrown into a starting lineup because you want to have them on there for 90 minutes.
Well, and also like Jamise, like think of Jamise Joseph. Like I think Jamise is a fantastic sub, but can start when like Mal's out or Ali Schlegel's out, whatever, like whatever we need to do up on the top line, whatever the formation is we're doing, because I don't know if we fully figured out who's even going to be starting up there yet. But she is fantastic. When she was really good in the game, she was really good. But when Mal comes back, she might become that super sub off the bench again, potentially. I don't know what Lauren's going to do. So it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, now what are we going to do? I'm also of this mentality that maybe Lauren is of the Emma Hayes, make them suffer. I want them to suffer. I'm not going to sub thing, because I feel like Nesbitt could come in and sub. B has been fantastic. And if we have a Nesbitt to come in off the bench, that would be a solid move to swap those players.
She doesn't have to go 90. That's
exactly, because B sometimes gets gas. You can see that there's players that are getting gas,
especially when you're
bring them in.
Playing like this, the way that everyone has to play defensively for so long because there's nothing going forward. You could tell all the players in this match were just absolutely tired by the end. And when they cut to those camera shots of them coming off the field, they looked like they wanted to just lie down and sleep. And it, like, every sub window felt like it came just a little too late, not just because of the difference that it could have made in the match earlier, but just the lack of energy that the players coming off the field had. I don't need players coming off the field when they're about to collapse. I need them to come off the field before you hit that threshold. But when it comes to further up the field in this match, like you mentioned, Jamise and Penelope, those two had like really good matches. They were doing their damnedest to get down the field in transition and score. lack of help and some inexperienced decisions by them because they're young players led to only that one absolutely insane goal by Mies, which was from an impossible angle, tied up the match, gave us hope, didn't last. But I'll remember that goal because it was absurd.
Yeah, I can't remember what I saw the XG on it was, but it was some like super low number. It was absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, shoot the ball. I mean, that's what you do because it might go in, and that's why you do that. And it just felt like Joseph and Hawking were both going when the other one wasn't. Like they were just a little off, and it's because they haven't played together enough. And I think that they lack a veteran up top. At the time, Grosso, I don't really know if I'd call her a vet, but she's also very new to the team, so I wouldn't
She's
expect.
23.
Yeah, I mean, but Mal is what, 26?
25, 6, something
5,
like that.
26, and she's a vet. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like I feel like the players that play at the international level, we kind of deem vets because like if you played in a World Cup or an Olympics, you're kind
Sure.
of there. But she's new to the team, so I wouldn't expect her to be like this big factor in leadership right out of the gate. But I just feel like we are headed in the right direction on the front end. It's just if we can figure out this midfield, we are going to be sitting in a really good spot. And I think that, as you said, we have the personnel. We just need to put them and tweak them a little bit. Diamond midfield would be fantastic.
Oh, it would. It really would.
It would.
I liked what I saw in Julia Grosso. 30 of 33 passing accuracy. It's at 90%, somewhere around there. That's what this team needs. I bet if she played further back, she would have at least had 40 something passes, maybe 50. I think it was Abby Urseg on the other side had 95 connected passes. It's like
that's ridiculous.
That's not acceptable. But the team as a whole had 78% passing accuracy. Clearly still an issue. That and possession. And then the shots, 10 shots, 3 on target, not good enough. When you have a player like Mal come back, when you have a player like Ludmila join the team, you'll figure out where to put Julia Grosso at that point. I think she'll probably play further back once Mal comes in. I think Mal's illness sort of completely changed whatever lineup Lauren really wanted to go with. Not just in personnel, but just the way that it was utilized. Like, I don't know if where Julia was playing was because of Mal being off the field. I don't know if it was just because Mal was off the field was Jamies actually starting. I'm not quite sure. I'm not in Lauren's head. I don't know those things. But as it pertains to Julia Grosso, when she's sitting there playing this sort of position that Ali Schlegel has occupied all season, Ali Schlegel is very good at pressing, and then she's very good at dropping back into that like 10 role to win aerial duels, to distribute where she can, and then to push the ball forward. Julia was kind of trying to do that, but like in a similar manner that we were discussing when it came to Leilani Nesbitt. She doesn't play that position at any level. She's usually this center midfielder, or she plays a little wider in the midfield, depending on the formation. For Canada, she plays a lot of double pivot 6. And when you ask her to be in this weird, like, false 9 sort of role, you lose what she's good at, and that's connecting the ball forward. When the ball was getting forward to a Jamise Joseph, to a Penelope Hocking, she wasn't running with them like a center forward would do. She was dropping back into the midfield, sort of hanging around at the top of the box where she's used to being.
Muscle
Whereas
memory.
Ali Schlegel would just dive into the box and try to get her head on a cross or something. So you're not, whatever this was not what I thought it was going to be. And I hope it's not what this continues to be when Mal gets back.
Yeah, it's complete muscle memory for her because she's so used to playing in that spot. And I get it, like you're asking her to do something, so she should do it, whatever, but it's hard, especially on a new team. And also, I don't know if Grosso was coming in thinking, okay, Mal's going to be here. I kind of know how she plays, so this is what I'm going to do. And then Mal's not there. So it's one of those where I think it's just the team is going to change in the next few weeks, with hopefully Ludmila getting the visa situation taken care of and Mal coming back. I think that we're going to see some differences. Hopefully Tatum is okay, whatever was going on there. I don't know if it was heat related, whatever it may be. Hopefully she's okay because we need her. And so the team's going to look different. But that being said, expectations need to be like low because they have to figure out how to play together. Like, we have talent, but none of them have played together before. So it's going to take some time for them to learn nuances of each other's play. And so hopefully it'll be an easy transition. But we'll see. Time will tell. And also I'll be very curious to see where Lauren plays them and then who makes the starting lineup. Because you would assume that Ludmila would start once she's here. Grosso's going to start, Mal's going to start, but then who that we currently have is going to then sit the bench is going to be a very interesting question moving forward.
So if they were going to play in this similar formation, who would you put on the field right now? Who's your 11?
Oh man. I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to play a 4-3-3,
like a four back with the two defensive midfielders, the two sort of like wing forward midfielders, and then two up top.
I mean, up top, I feel like it's got to be Mal and Hocking. That's my two that I can think of. And my four, I know in the back. I know I'm going to jump around here, but I'm just thinking of the ones that I know. The midfield is where I'm going to struggle. As I said, I would drop Carrie back. She's plays center back. Then you have Anderson next to her on the left because she's left-footed.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because now we don't have two left-footed center backs anymore. I don't think Carrie's left-footed.
That was very short-lived.
But and then Tatum, of course, if Tatum's healthy and ready to go, you go there.
And Kuika.
And then Kuika on the outside, yes. And if we insist on playing Kuika centrally and you move Carrie into the midfield, then I say it's got to be Cameron Bogalski on the outside.
Either her or Taylor. Like
I like Bogalski better than Malum personally, but that's just me.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. I'm just saying we have options that are actual right backs. Although I guess technically Taylor Malum isn't necessarily a right back. She's only been playing it for a little bit. She was a midfielder when she joined the team.
Chardonnay Curran, I mean, we saw that happen too.
She played well sometimes, but other times was a bit of a struggle.
It's hard. But then the center, oh man.
So who are your two, if you pushed Carrie back, who would your two defensive midfielders be?
Julia Grosso and B. Franklin. Based on current play, that's who I go with. I mean, B gives us height. Shout out Grant, Height FC. And B gives us and the physicality. I like the physicality that B brings to I know that sometimes people think it's a little excessive. I don't. I like it. It's my thing. And then am I missing one spot?
Your two wings.
Okay, I got two wings.
One would have to be Ludmila based on your previous comments.
It's got to be Ludmila. And then It makes me sad because I don't want to sit Allie Schlegel, but she's not going to be
She's not a
playing.
wing.
No, she's not going to be playing.
It's like Jamise, Jenna.
That's the thing. Like, I really like Jamise a lot. Like, but I think that she's really good as a super sub. I really like her coming in with tired legs.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be Jenna. I think you start Jenna. That took way too long for me to go through. Sorry. That was a lot of
Hey, you're
thinking.
good. Very similar to what I would have thought based on that formation. Obviously, if you change the formation, I'd change up the lineup completely. But as Julia Grosso came in, I figured that Allie would be benched.
Makes me sad.
I especially figured she would be benched when Ludmila signed, because you have to play someone up top with Mal, and it's going to be Penelope. And if you were to play Mal back on the wing instead of up top, you would definitely put a player like Ludmila there instead of Allie. I would not be surprised if Allie played up top with Penelope and then Ludmila and Mal were the wings. I wouldn't be surprised by that either.
I wouldn't be mad about that.
I would even say that it would be possible that Julia Grosso would be playing on the wing if they didn't want to play her at the 6 in this formation. If you played her in like a diamond midfield, she would just be the center midfielder playing up behind the 2 forwards. But that's not how Lauren's formation is. So
I don't think Lauren's going to do that.
No. But I thought playing Carrie at center back worked in the Summer Cup when Sam went down. It looked good. Like I said before, she's been a center back for years. She knows how to play that position. She's a veteran. She could be a great help to Hannah Anderson as well. She's a great player when she's playing defensively, and I have no doubt that there are people on that club that believe the same. And I want to see Kuika playing in a more outside position, getting up higher in the field. I want to see Julia Grosso actually play midfield. And I don't know where you put Mal. Like, Mal's going to play wherever she wants to play, basically. She'll swap either sides of the field or sides of the center forward position. She'll be playing back defensively as she always does. Like, she just covers so much ground. It's insane. So it really doesn't matter where you put her. She's gonna find her chances. So,
but yeah, you just know that she's going to be on the field somewhere. Like, that's
well,
not, yeah, it's like one of those things. And we didn't say, obviously it's Alyssa Naringgold.
Oh, sure.
But it's just one of those things where you're like, it's there. Like, you can see it's there, but we just got to put the pieces together. And I think that there's going to be a lot of interchange. I could see a lot of interchange if Ludmila's playing and Mal and Hawking. Like, you could
swap them around like crazy.
Exactly. Absolutely. They would be like the triple espresso on the U.S. men's national team, where they all kind of ran around and played all over the place, and it was ridiculously hard to defend, just like Washington Spirit kind of do the same thing, where Trinity kind of just roams, and she's hard to defend. That's the thing. Mal, I feel like with more talent up top, can roam more instead of being the central target, because you have to defend everybody.
Yeah, it'll be strange to see what this next lineup looks like if Mal comes back healthy. And I'm not quite sure just going into this week if Ludmila's visa stuff is going to get sorted out. And even if she only gets a couple of practices with the team and then travels with them to LA, I don't think that's grounds for starting.
I mean, look at Bethany Balser. She was just like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to start. And this,
but she's already played in the league. She's already, she was with Louisville from the early in the week and on. She's not coming from internationally
so
playing
weird
in a World Cup Olympics.
So weird seeing her though play for a different team other than
the purple headband
Seattle.
really threw me off. I didn't.
But I hope
most.
that everybody that was traded is happy and everything is whatever. But there were some wild trades, but I think that we've made some really good moves in this trade window. And I'm excited to see them all come together.
Yeah,
Ludmila is talented.
When you think back to like the beginning of the season when we were having these conversations about the early signings, it was kind of like, okay, are they going to replace someone that's still with the team? Are they going to make the starting lineup? Like, what's going to happen here? But then obviously you get someone like Sam Staub, and it's like she's absolutely a starter. You get someone like Natalia Kuika, you're like, she's absolutely a starter. And then you get to this window, which still hasn't closed yet. The Red Stars could still make some sort of moves, even though I believe their front office has basically said that they're kind of not going to respond to the Sam Staub injury with any moves. I think when you get a player like Julia Grosso, you're like, well, she's a starter. When you get a player like Ludmila, you're like, well, she's a starter. So I like that we're bringing in people that are obvious starters, and you're not like, it's a good problem to have sometimes when you're sitting there questioning who should be on the field and who shouldn't be on the field. But it's a better situation when you're just like, we've automatically upgraded, and I think we didn't know if that was going to happen with our draft class, but we absolutely know that players in that draft class have made the starting lineup now and are succeeding. Like a Hannah Anderson, who we're not sitting here saying anybody should replace her. And now you have these two players coming in that are absolutely starter material, especially because they play internationally for national teams that have success internationally. And I like that feeling. I like it a lot that we've upgraded, and that's just moving into this part of this latter half of the season, and not moving into the beginning of a season, which we will do here soon.
Yeah, I think with Ludmila, if anybody had questions, I mean, there was a lot of like, well, she didn't have a lot of production like this in her season, but if anybody watched the Olympics, like that questions were answered if anybody had any. The talent's there, the speed's there, the ability is very much there. Like I'm very excited to see her in a Red Stars kit and see where we play her and how this all works out, because as you said, we gained 2 starters, and then the question is, where do they go? Obviously we do have a lot of talented players, some of them are still learning, so the question is how Lauren's going to play that. You want the rookies to learn, but you also want these players that are going to be starters that are they came here to start. They didn't sign here to not start. So it's going to be that give and take and how that's going to work. And I'm very excited as a Red Stars fan to see what, like, moving forward, what we do.
And just league wide in general, huge news was the historic CBA that was agreed upon between the Players Association and the league through 2030. Some absolutely incredible stuff within this whole CBA that it has a lot to do with protecting players and their futures and giving them a lot more control over their own, or a lot more autonomy over their own careers, which is fantastic for a league that has seemed to, well, has had plenty of issues in the past when it comes to player autonomy, and then just the scandals in general that have harmed and damaged players, and now have tried to focus a lot on player safety, on developing, on player development, on actually giving players the choice to where they want to play. We see it a lot with trades that are good on one side, bad on the other side. When it comes to giving a player the ability to say, hey, I'd like to leave and go to a better situation. And then the team saying, yeah, of course you can go to a better situation. But then that leads to another player sometimes getting traded without, wanting to be traded. But that happens in every league around the world. It doesn't mean that it's, acceptable, but it's not an unheard of thing. But with the CBA, more than a couple of some wild changes that are coming here, and I'll just break down one, and then we can discuss and see where it goes. The first one was unrestricted free agency for all that aren't under contract anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
That we're not going to get those stupid lists where everybody has the rights to this person and that person and the other person, and like people can trade Abby Wambach's rights and Nadine Onger's rights and all of these players that are done, very much done. I think it just gives the players more free, like they're free to go where they want to go and they're not held down. I think it's good for the most part. There's pros and cons to all these things. There were reasons why these were in place because the league was in its infancy. Now we are growing out of infancy. And so that I do appreciate us moving forward. Also, when you said 2030, I just realized how close that is, and I can't believe it.
Yep. Yeah. It's only just a little over 5 years away, which is nuts. Yeah. Unrestricted free agency for all is good because now I won't have my Excel spreadsheet trying to figure out who has enough service time to be a free agent and then which players have enough service time to be restricted free agents, and like how long has this player been in the league, what counts based on which contracts they've signed, all that jazz. I'm happy that it now will just be if your contract is up, you're a free agent, whether you signed a 1-year contract when you were a rookie or if you signed a 5-year contract when you were 30 years old. It's regardless of your situation, whenever your contract is done, you can go wherever you want. And I love that. Especially without the restricted free agency, because we've seen how that kind of goes, like us getting Kuika and restricted free agency because Portland dropped the ball.
Way to go.
That was very interesting. But yeah, I don't need that anymore.
I think it will also push teams to sign players in season too, because if
that's
a
true.
player has a 1-year contract, Hannah Anderson, I think that we need to sign them so that we can. I know, but still, let's just sign it, and so we don't have to worry about it. And I just need that not to stress me out. But it's just stuff like that where you're looking at a player that might have 1 year on their contract, and it's like they're playing well. We don't want somebody to we don't even want them to think about it. So we're just going to do this midseason and be done with it.
Yeah. And then all of the contracts that players sign now are all guaranteed. There's no, like if a team gets rid of you 1 year into your contract, they don't have to pay you out or anything based on your guarantees. So whatever.
That was a garbage thing. This is a great thing.
So whatever you sign as a contract, you're getting that money, which is great. The biggest one that people were talking about was the elimination of the draft. But not only is there the elimination of the draft, there's the elimination of the expansion draft and the elimination of the discovery rule. So all three of those things, goodbye. Very pro-con like situations when it comes to these. Getting rid of the draft, something that plenty of people have been talking about for years. America is the only soccer country in the world that does drafts. Every other country in the world, you have this like way that you build your team, with whether it be with local players or having enough money to go and sign the big player from outside your country or in your country. And now in America, for the last several years, or at least since the conception of this league, it's been, the top player in college, you can draft if you have the number 1 overall pick. And if they're not in college, you have to go through the discovery rights rule, whatever the hell that was, to to gain the rights of a player that wasn't 18 years old to eventually be on your team if they agreed. That all that's gone, and I'm fine with that. And then the expansion draft being gone, like screw expansion draft teams getting the number 1 overall pick. Screw only getting, what is it, like 7 players like the ability to be protected on your roster. Like, your roster is your roster. I don't care who's in your team or in your league. Players should not be forced to go to some other state because a team didn't have enough selections to protect them, or a player gets traded away from a team that they love to be a part of because the team is trying to protect their draft pick that they haven't even chosen yet. Like, I'm just like, I don't need any of that anymore. I'm sick of it.
Well, we don't need to make players feel bad either and put your team in a bad spot by like, I'm not protecting you, but hey, guess what? Welcome back. Like, look at some of these players that came back and on these teams. And it's like, that's such an uncomfortable feeling for them to be like, you didn't care about me enough, but now I'm back and now I have to play for your, it was just a really awkward, uncomfortable thing. I'm assuming, obviously we're not in the know of like how the players feel.
Yeah, I'm curious what their headset would their mindset would be when it came to not making the protection list. I haven't spoken to any players about that, but I am curious.
Am I incorrect in thinking that Jenna Bike was not protected?
She wasn't protected, no.
Yeah, like what on earth? Like, first of all, I bet some teams are kicking themselves. Second of all, like, how crappy is that? Like, obviously she's a talented player and there's that. And it's just, it's crappy. It's yucky. I'm glad it's gone. I didn't like it. And also the other crappy side of it, because I'm just going to sit here and talk about all the crappy stuff, is when like during the expansion draft this last go around, they were passing, like the teams were passing. So it's like, I don't want any of your players. Like, obviously none of the Chicago players even got selected, which whatever, don't care. But you just decided, like, it, I think that whole thing where they passed at the end, I don't even remember how many times the teams passed. That was probably a huge indication that this is a massive waste of everybody's time because it felt like it.
Yeah, I'm glad the expansion draft is gone. I've never liked expansion drafts. As for the draft, that's going to be interesting, that one being gone.
That is my concern because I'm worried about league parity. I don't want us to turn into a league where we have these super teams that are built. The teams with the most money are going to be able to buy the teams, and you're going to have these smaller market teams that can't compete. They might not have the most marketable location, so they're not going to get players to come there. The weather might not be as warm, or it might not be on the beach or whatever it may be, where they're not going to be able to get players to come to these teams, even though they're good teams. With the college draft, you at least knew that the teams at the bottom of the table were going to get those higher picks. So they were going to get hopefully talent. And that's why the draft system is so good. Yes, the other countries don't do this, but a lot of other countries don't have like a college system like we do, where that's where the talent pool comes from. They build, as you said. So it's just a little different. I go back and forth with this as long as there's parity within the league. And you're probably going to hear me say this so many times on all of these things that are coming through with this new CBA. But if the parity can continue with the league, I'm fine with it. I just am very concerned that we're going to end up with super teams, and it's going to end up like the leagues in Spain, England, France, etc., where they have like just a couple top teams and that's it. And I don't want that, because that's not what the NWSL should be.
The best part of the NWSL has always been like, for the last several years, the bottom of the table team has usually been pretty, like, just 3-4 wins away from actually making the playoffs. And then there's been even times where we've gone all the way back down to the final day of the season to decide who the Shield winner was going to be, or even who was going to be in the playoffs. And that has always been a great thing. There's other leagues where it's just like a fight between the top two and that's it. And we're kind of sort of close to that this year, with Orlando and Washington and Kansas City sort of being these three powerhouse teams, with New York sort of climbing from a little bit of struggle they had earlier in the season. But we still have that parity the of every team being able to beat any team on any given day. And I totally understand what you're saying about parity in that sort of situation, but I don't know how much, like, the only issue that I have with it is with the increased salary cap, which is also in here, as that rises with league revenue rising over the next 5 years. That comes with transparency, needing to know, like, how much these players that are coming out of college are being paid to go to these big market teams. I wish there was a little more transparency in this league to know who or how these bigger market teams are getting these incredibly talented players for the money that they're getting them. Um, that's the only issue that I kind of see with this, but that necessarily doesn't have to do with the draft. Like, the draft's gone. There's nothing that we have to discuss about that. It's gone. But with it being
contract
gone,
transparency's got to be a thing.
Yeah, with it being gone, it just comes with, like, where are these players going to go? We have no idea. But I don't know how many top players you're going to get wanting to go to Utah. Like, it's not.
Would Ali Sentnor be there if it wasn't for the draft? Probably
Right.
not.
Exactly. And there's a lot of players from, like, there's a lot of isolation when it comes to soccer. It's getting better, but, like, there's a lot of players from California. There's a lot of players from the East Coast. Like, there's a lot of players from Florida. Like, there's destination spots that these players want to go to. And I don't know how many players are going to, play 4 years of college in California and then want to go play in Kansas City. Although with their new stadium, they probably will, but and how good their team is. But just in general, it'll be interesting to watch, just this first year, to see those top players and which destinations they select and how many top players one individual team can sign right away.
Well, and I have not thoroughly read the CBA, but my other question is, when can teams start contacting these players?
That's a good point.
Can they, in the middle of the season, like college soccer season just started, can they start reaching out to a Trinity Byers and Alexi Misimo and whomever else? Iowa just played them this weekend. That's why I'm talking about them. And they're like two of the most talented players in college soccer right now. So when can they start reaching out and like contacting them and making them offers and talking to them? Can they sign a deal mid-college season and be like, yeah, I'm going to go do this? I don't know all the ins and outs. And that's where, like, these new things, I'm curious to see how it plays out. I am open-minded and I'm hoping that it goes well. I just am concerned. That's the level I'm at. I'm concerned because I just don't want to lose the parity, but I just would like to know more about that sort of thing. Because, like, you think about recruiting when it comes to colleges, recruiting high school players, there's a time frame where you can start doing that. I'm curious how this is going, because obviously the NWSL is currently going on. College just started. Like, when is the time frame? I'm curious to see how that's all going to be.
Yeah, and that kind of also goes into this. We don't need to go through it in detail, but there's this consistent thing happening in the league now where teams are signing players who aren't even going to go to college. And will that become more of a thing or less of a thing now that they don't have to go through the draft to get them? Like, will there be less young players because they can just sign them when they are 22 years old, or will there be more young players because they don't want to wait until they're 22 years old to offer them these big contracts. I don't know how that will play out, but we'll see. The biggest thing that I think outside of the draft talk that people were talking about was that all trades, not only all trades, but all intra-league and interleague transfers have to be approved by the players involved. That's huge. Every single transaction that goes between teams inside the league and outside the league, now you have to have a yes from the player on both sides if it involves both players to have this executed. And we've talked about the issues like we just had with the Bethany Balser one, where one player doesn't know about it, the other player did because they requested it. It was the same thing with like earlier in this offseason with like the Ashley Sanchez stuff, like that blindsided her, that sort of thing. Now you have this ability to basically have a no trade clause inside of every single player's contract. And I don't know how that's going to play out. I feel like there will be a lot of teams that easily just ship players away because are wanting to ship players away, but now they can't. But then I think there's also a lot of teams that will feel good about their team as a whole already, and they won't concern themselves with this rule change because they had no interest in moving away from their players in general. But it gives players a lot more autonomy over their own careers. But it might also sort of factor into that league parity thing where a team is trying to get better, but they can't trade a player away without sending them to the absolute best situation for them. And then who knows what they get in return. And then if they wanted a player in return, then that player would have to agree to come to them. And I feel like this might get a little messy, but maybe just as messy as it already is. So the change is interesting, and we'll find out, like all the rest of this stuff, really how it plays out. I don't have too much to say on it.
I struggle with this one. This is the biggest issue that I have because I understand let me preface by saying I am not against players' safety and protection and all of that at all. But I also feel like if a team can't exist and function and their front office can't make decisions, the team is not going to exist for very long if they can't get better because people won't move. So my concern is there might be smaller market teams where they can't make some of these transactions that they want to make because of one reason or another, that I'm scared. Obviously, this is very big talk, that teams might end up folding because they can't function. There is such a power dynamic between players in the front office and staff and et cetera. Also, this, to talk about it, it's protecting staff too. There's a thing in there about staff protection too. Yeah. And so I just get worried that we're going to give the players too much power. And nobody come after me for saying that. And I hope people know what I mean, because the front office has to be able to make moves. And if they can't, and as you said, like the best situation, because you want to trade player A, but they're like, I only want to go play on the West Coast. Well, what if you don't have a player that you want to get from the team on the West Coast, or they want $1 million for that player or whatever, like, and you can't make the trade? Like, I feel like there has to be some sort of negotiation piece. And I don't know if giving the players essentially a no trade clause, everybody, is the move. And so, but again, we'll see how it plays out. I'm just worried about parity because I'm worried about the smaller market teams, the teams that maybe like Chicago and like Kansas City and Houston that are located in non-beach locations, non-ideal locations. And so you were in Utah, for example, as well. Like I just worry about some of those teams. Like Utah's in kind of a crappy spot, and even Bay for that matter. Like they are just starting to build their team. They have these contracts, and now they're like, okay, now what do I do? Because I don't get the draft that I thought I was going to get. And all these teams that made these trades for these draft picks that aren't anything now.
Yep. There are beaches in Chicago. Let's just put that out there.
Well, not an ocean.
There's also only beaches for like 4 months out of the year.
I mean, Chicago's a great city. I'm not trying to, and Kansas City is a great city. Like, I'm not trying to, but it's not the ideal location that some of the players are looking for. It's not going to be a San Diego or even a Portland, a big soccer city, like those sort of places.
True.
That's the thing. Like you're like a New York, New Jersey, whatever they decide to call themselves for the day, what state they want to be. That it's that sort of thing that I struggle with it, but I'm hoping that I'm very wrong. That's where I'm at.
The biggest thing that I think will come out of this, or that I really think this might translate to, is shorter contracts. I think you're going to see, like, we thought that like the league always had pretty short contracts. Now we're starting to see these 4-year, 5-year contracts. Now with this whole I can't trade these players without their consent thing, I feel like teams will try to stick with that 1-2 year contracts to really give them more flexibility to change their rosters and have a lot of turnover if they want to get better, or at least have these discussions with players to see if they're willing to be traded, but prior to trading them or prior to even discussing trades with other teams. But I do think that the contracts might get smaller when we thought they were going to get bigger, because I think teams will now want to have that flexibility remain in their control over the players that they have. But then do the players who want these huge contracts be like, well, maybe I don't want to play with you if you're only offering me a couple years, and then they are willing to be traded and then give that consent. And so there's a lot of factors that kind of go into this. And once we see that like first report that's like, Kansas City tried to trade this player to New York, and player A agreed to the trade, but player B said no, whatever, like that'll be when you see that article, it'll be like, okay, this is now interesting.
It's real. Yeah.
Yeah. The rest of, go ahead. You were going to say something?
No, the only thing that I am curious is if front offices and teams will just be like, we want to trade you. And if a player's like, no, I don't want to do that, then they're like, okay, fine, you're going to sit on the bench.
Yeah, bench them. Like, that's what a lot of other leagues do. And for players that have no trade clauses.
Is that protecting? Like, are we making the players happy? Like, again, this is where I go back and forth with it in my head, but I don't know.
Essentially making them unhappy to force them into consenting for a trade. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So many different scenarios. It's so fascinating. This whole CBA is so fascinating. The other parts of it that aren't as like, well, they're huge, but they're not like big talking discussion points are the minimum salaries increasing from 48 to 48,000 and then rising incrementally to 82,000 by 2030. League salary cap rises as the league's revenue rises. Prize money for end of the season awards increases. No more gift cards, as you said, prior to this recording, Liz.
Thank you, Bethany Balser, for that information.
The maximum number of games being played annually has increased, and now charter flights are allowed up to 6 legs per season, and then they can add additional charters for certain scenarios based on player safety. So huge CBA, goes all the way through 2030. The owners in the league and the league itself are sacrificing a lot of cash to eventually by 2030, whenever those media rights deals are up, to make a ton of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue to So they're basically risking some money now and are going to make a ton of money down the line with how big this league is about to become. So huge for players, huge for the league overall. A lot of things in here no league in the US has ever done, and that sets the NWSL apart, as the NWSL has always tried to set itself apart from other teams or other leagues in the US across all sports. So cool moment, amazing moment. Tons of players involved across the league, across generations, to get stuff like this done, and it's really cool to witness and be a part of this sport at this junction, you know.
Yeah, especially after seeing in my lifetime so many leagues fold, to see us go from CBA to new CBA with that you can see the league growing, which is such a good sign. And now it just keeps getting better for the players, and for the staff. As I said, I think that that's a very important point, because we've learned that there has been some issues with staff getting mistreated on some of these teams as well. And so to know that there's protections out there and that the league cares, and that, like, they're both coming together to make this happen. I think it was probably there were probably so many conversations about this and so many negotiations. I would love to know what the players brought and what how all the negotiations broke out, but I'm just glad that it came to where everybody's happy. It seems like this is really good for the players as a whole, and I just am very curious to see how it's going to play out.
Yeah, so we talked about a lot today, more than I figured that we would. We didn't even get to talk about next week with Angel City and the Red Stars, but you know, I'll wrap things up for this week, and you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Make sure that you're subscribed to us on all those platforms to know when our next episode goes up. I'm really glad that we're back. I missed hanging out with Liz and Grant when they come back here soon, talking Red Stars, talking NWSL, talking U.S. Women's National Team. Make sure that you're also following us at Red Stars Report on our social media channels to keep up with the latest news between the episodes. Don't forget to join our Discord with the link in the description. Fantastic community. Love all those people. Next time you see us, like I said, we'll be talking about the Red Stars match against Angel City, and we'll keep you updated on the status of Mal Swanson when she comes back from her illness, and if Ludmila has joined the team in the US yet. But, you know, with that, we'll see you next week for a Red Stars Report.